the soft golden light from the crystal chandelier in the luxurious office of Emma's Culinary Haven surrounds me. Emma, 55 years old, as I sit at the walnut wood table, reviewing the new menu for the evening party dishes, like grilled Wagyu beef with red wine sauce and passion fruit mousse cake, tell a story of sophistication. The town of Vermont outside is enveloped in silence, with only the sound of the autumn wind through the slightly open window carrying the scent of dry leaves and cool air. Emma's Culinary Haven, the upscale restaurant I have built over the past 10 years, is the culinary heart of the town, where I bring joy through meticulously prepared dishes, a place where the elite gather to enjoy and share stories of the autumn festival. I, who carefully select each ingredient and presentation, have turned the restaurant into a dream come true, a place that heals the soul through each dish that leaves guests, like Mrs. Clara or Rachel, in awe. Tonight, as I make notes on a new dessert, my phone on the table vibrates its screen light, cutting through my thoughts as if a sudden cold gust had blown through. I thought it was a message from the herb supplier, but when I opened it, the name James, my husband, appeared, and the words struck through my heart like a sharp blade, causing my breath to stop. Emma, I'm sorry I can't continue living with you. Sophie understands me better than you. I'll move out this week. Don't make this harder for us. Sophie, James's 25-year-old assistant, whom he always praised for being creative and quick-witted. Meanwhile, the chandelier light shines on the menu, the dishes almost reminding me of the days I once thought I was invincible. I tightened my grip on the phone, my hand trembling, feeling like the world had just collapsed, but I didn't cry or scream. I took a deep breath, the scent of polished wood pulling me back, and I typed a cold reply, just 4 words. Do as you wish. I didn't know what I would do, but a fire had ignited within me, as if the golden lights not only illuminated the room, but also sparked my determination. James, the man I once loved, who I once designed the first menu with, now appeared as a stranger. Cruel. I stood up and walked out onto the small balcony, where the silver moonlight bathed the silent town, and the autumn wind blew through my hair, soothing the storm inside me. I read the message again, the pain creeping in, but not unexpectedly, as if I had sensed his distance long ago, just never expecting him to be so cruel as to end 25 years of marriage. With a text I whispered to the wind, my voice firm. I will not let you destroy what I have built with my heart and talent. This town, with its cobblestone streets and wooden houses, is where I found joy after years of stressful accounting. Emma's Culinary Haven is not just a job. It is my breath, the place where I help people like Rachel, a single mother, rediscover their smile through exquisite dinners. I thought about James, about how we met 26 years ago at a food fair in Burlington, when he complimented my pumpkin soup and invited me for coffee. But now this message made me doubt everything, as if every memory was a dish that could go bad. Had James really betrayed me all along? Or was this just an impulsive moment? I turned back to the office, the lights shining on the brass plaque, Emma's Culinary Haven, hanging on the door, and I ran my hand over it, feeling the coolness as a reminder that I had built this dream from scratch. James may think I am weak, but he doesn't know I got back up after my mother passed away when I thought I would never smile again. I opened my laptop, saved James's message into a separate folder, like the first step in my plan. The autumn wind blew harder, carrying the scent of dry leaves and strength. Have you ever felt like the whole world collapsed in a moment when the one closest to you turned their back? I have been through it, but I know I will rise stronger than ever. The signs of betrayal had quietly crept in for a while, as silent as leaves falling before autumn, but I was too busy with Emma's Culinary Haven to notice them, as if the golden light could not hide the darkness that had been creeping in. James started traveling more frequently, mentioning late meetings at the marketing company, but when I asked, he just shook his head, his voice hesitant. "Emma, don't worry, it's just work. I don't want you to be bothered with this. Just focus on your restaurant, it's much more important." Meanwhile, small signs appeared like cracks in a perfectly presented dish. His suit smelled of a strange perfume, not the one I had given him for our anniversary. He paid more attention to his appearance, bought expensive watches, something he had once criticized as frivolous during the days when we were saving every penny. One time, I found a hotel bill in his jacket pocket from a city he had never mentioned, and when I asked, he laughed it off, his voice gentle but cold. "Emma, it's just a mistake by the secretary. Don't make a big deal out of it. I'm too tired from work to explain these meaningless things." I wanted to trust him, but inside, a small voice warned me that I was being deceived, as if I were choosing a dish without knowing it had gone bad. I'm not as naive as James thinks. Before opening the restaurant, I had worked as an accountant for 20 years, knowing how to read figures and spot anomalies. 5 years ago, I quietly opened a separate real estate investment account, not because I suspected James, but because of my mother's lesson. Emma, always have a piece of sky for yourself. I bought a few small plots of land in the outskirts of Vermont without telling anyone, even him. And every month I transferred a little money from the restaurant into it, like an invisible shield. I checked the joint bank account, and strange transactions jumped out at me like knife cuts, deep into trust. Large withdrawals, transfers to a strange name, and I recorded everything carefully, day by day, amount by amount, like an accountant returning to instinct. James was not just distant. He was living a different life right behind my back, as if I were just a decoration in the restaurant he wanted to take over. I thought about the times he came home late. His phone always locked the hugs, growing rarer, and I fooled myself into thinking it was just a tough phase that we would sit on the porch again, growing old together. But now this message had made me more alert than ever, as if the dish before me had just revealed fake ingredients. I stood up, made a cup of chamomile tea, and looked out the window where the night in the town was still with only the sound of the wind through the trees. I remembered the early days of opening Emma's Culinary Haven, when I worked until exhaustion, searching for chefs, organizing the first party that made the whole town marvel. James had supported me, or at least I thought so, but now I see clearly that he only viewed the restaurant as an asset to take over. I tightened my wedding ring, then took it off and placed it on the table, the chandelier light shining on it like a farewell. It no longer mattered. I returned to the laptop, checked James's old emails, the things he left on the shared computer. A hidden folder made my heart race, as if I had just discovered a dish that had been deliberately ruined. Bills from fancy restaurants, flight tickets, expensive gifts. I printed everything out, organized them neatly, each piece of paper a piece of the betrayal. I didn't cry, but felt a cold determination, like a chef preparing to protect a precious dish. James thought I was just the obedient wife who cooked and organized parties, but he was seriously mistaken. I had spent my life building surviving, and now I would fight to protect what was mine. Almost midnight, the town was asleep, but I still sat there planning like a chef, sketching out my greatest dish. Emma's Culinary Haven is my blood and flesh. The house is my memory, and James will not take them. Have you ever realized that the one you love most turned out to be the betrayer? Like discovering a precious dish was fake. I'm living in that moment, but what I'm about to discover will make James tremble. The next morning, I woke up in the small apartment above Emma's Culinary Haven, the sunrise peeking through the window, but it didn't soothe the storm inside me, as if the sunlight couldn't penetrate the frosted glass of my pain. I looked into the mirror, seeing tired eyes, but there was also a gleam of determination, like the light reflecting off a perfectly plated dish. I put on my cashmere sweater, brewed a cup of black coffee, and went downstairs to the restaurant where the tables were arranged elegantly, as if telling the story of my journey. The doorbell jingled to welcome the first customers. But the atmosphere today felt heavier, as if the rumors of the divorce had spread throughout the town. Someone said Emma's Culinary Haven was drowning in debt, that I wasn't strong enough to keep it afloat. The crowd thinned out with only a few loyal patrons, like Mrs. Clara stopping by, asking about the new dish. With a kind smile, I stood behind the counter, arranging the menus, answering customers. But every smile I gave felt forced, like a dish beautifully plated, but lacking soul. James didn't just want to leave me. He was trying to destroy my entire life, as if he wanted to erase every trace of me in this town. At noon, a letter from James's lawyer arrived at the restaurant like a sharp cut. I opened it, my hands trembling slightly, reading the cold words, demanding I relinquish part of the restaurant's assets, stating that James had ownership rights based on an old contract I'd never seen. The words were sharp as a knife stabbing deep into my chest. But I didn't let myself fall. I sat down in the velvet chair in my small office, looking at the stack of bills piled on the desk. Rent, supplies, staff salaries. It all felt like boulders weighing me down. But I thought about the early days of opening Emma's Culinary Haven, when I worked myself to exhaustion, searched for chefs, and organized the first banquet that made the whole town marvel. Now everything I built was shaking, and James knew it, like someone deliberately ruining a precious dish. I wanted to cry, wanted to give up. But then the restaurant door swung open, and Lisa walked in. Her sharp eyes, quick stride like someone bringing light into the dark room. Lisa, my best friend from college, now a lawyer in Burlington, didn't mince words. "Emma, sit down, we need to talk. And I'm not leaving until you understand that you're not alone in this," she said, her voice filled with determination. I poured coffee for both of us, and Lisa went through my books, flipping through each page with focus frowning when she saw the drop in revenue. But then her eyes lit up when I revealed the secret real estate investment account. "Oh my God, Emma, you're a genius. You've been preparing for this day without even knowing it," she said, her voice full of excitement, as if discovering a forgotten dish. The properties I'd bought in the outskirts of Vermont had significantly appreciated, not just as a shield, but as my fortress. Lisa brought action, not just hope. "You need a good accountant, and I know exactly the right person," she said, pulling out her phone to call Mark, an accountant specializing in complex divorces. She also suggested I hold a small event at the restaurant to dispel the rumors. "This town loves you, Emma. They'll stand by you, just like they always come to enjoy your food," she said, her tone firm. I hesitated, my pride hurt, not wanting anyone to pity me. But Lisa took my hand, her voice resolute. "You're not alone, Emma. Don't let James think he can win by slandering you in this restaurant." Her words were like a ray of light cutting through the darkness, and I nodded, feeling like I had regained a part of the strength I had lost, as if I had found a forgotten dish. In the afternoon, Lisa returned with a group of loyal customers. Mrs. Clara brought friends. Rachel from the support group also came, not just to eat, but to tell everyone that Emma's Culinary Haven was still standing strong, that the rumors were lies, Mrs. Clara even brought one of my menus to the women's club meeting, telling the town that no one hosted dinner parties like I did. I stood in the restaurant looking at the familiar faces, and my heart warmed as if the light from the dishes was spreading. They weren't just customers. They were my family. The reason I opened this restaurant, I started to take action. Meeting Mark the accountant. Lisa introduced a sharp man who specialized in asset disputes. Mark went through James's letter and scoffed. "He thinks you'll give up easily, but he's wrong, Emma, and I'll make sure he pays for this arrogance." He asked me to bring all the documents from the restaurant contract to my real estate account. And with each step I took, I felt stronger, like a chef preparing for the decisive banquet. But every night, when I closed the restaurant, I still felt a void, wondering what I had done wrong for James to betray me like this. Lisa told me not to blame myself. He's not worthy of you, Emma, and you'll prove that to the world. Her words were like a wind blowing away the dark clouds, and I stood in front of the restaurant door, looking at the streetlights shining on the sign of Emma's Culinary Haven. This restaurant was the dream. I bled and cried to build, and James would not destroy it. Have you ever felt like the whole world was against you, but still found the strength to rise? I was there, and what I was about to discover would make James pay dearly. A week after Lisa ignited the spark of hope, I sat in the apartment above Emma's Culinary Haven, the pale moonlight streaming through the window like a dish of gentle light. I held a cold cup of coffee, looking at the pile of papers on the desk. Strange bills, emails from James, and meticulous notes on bank transactions, each sheet a piece of the betrayal. But I knew they didn't tell the whole story. James didn't just want to leave me. He was hiding something bigger, and I was determined to uncover it, as if I was analyzing a dish to find the hidden ingredients. I wouldn't let him push me into the dark, and that thought burned within me, driving me to dig deeper. That night, Lisa called at midnight, her voice urgent. "Emma, you have to see this right now. I've found a clue that could change everything." She sent an email telling me to check James's old computer, the one he had left in the garage of our shared house. I had never thought to rummage through it, but Lisa insisted. "He's not as careful as you think, Emma, and what you find will make him tremble." I turned on the computer, the screen lit up in the dark room, and after a few minutes of searching, I opened a hidden folder titled Plan. My heart raced like discovering a dish, deliberately ruined. What I saw froze the blood in my veins. Dozens of emails between James and Sophie, discussing withdrawing money from the joint account, transferring it to a foreign account, and buying a luxury apartment in Boston. One email made me choke. James wrote, "Emma won't dare to fight back. She only knows how to cook and host parties. The restaurant will soon be ours." Every word felt like a hammer striking my chest, and I read it over and over, feeling like the dish of my life had just been destroyed. Not only betrayal, not just leaving, but James also had someone else, and they had been planning this for months. I opened an attachment, a forged contract claiming I agreed to relinquish the restaurant assets. My signature was forged so skillfully, it was terrifying. I sat there, my hands trembling, my breath heavy, the images of 25 years of marriage flashing in my mind, the mornings I cooked for James, the nights I stayed up late, preparing parties, the times I sacrificed my dreams for his success. And now, he called me the one who only knows how to cook and host parties. The anger flared up, but it wasn't blind. It was cold, sharp, like a chef preparing to defend a precious dish. I was no longer a victim. I was the one in control. I printed every email, every attachment, or organized them into a thick folder, each page like a bullet. To bring down James, I called Lisa, my voice calm but firm. "You were right, he has another woman, and he thinks I'll stay silent, but I'll show him that Emma's Culinary Haven is not just food. It's my power." Lisa wasn't surprised. "He's always been arrogant, but you have me, Mark, and this whole town. Emma will make him pay." She suggested taking the evidence to Mark, our accountant, and I agreed. But in my heart, I wanted James to face the consequences in front of the whole town, in front of those who had once respected him. Emma's Culinary Haven was not just a restaurant. It was a symbol of my resilience, and I would use it to retaliate. The next morning, I went to Mark's office carrying the file, and he went through each page with a sharp gaze. "This isn't just a property dispute, Emma. This is fraud, and he could go to jail for this." His words made me shudder, but not out of fear. Instead, I felt new strength, as if I was holding a torch to illuminate James's darkness. Mark asked for more time to prepare, but warned, He won't sit still when he knows you have this, be careful. Emma, I nodded, but in my heart, I was ready like a chef preparing for the decisive banquet. James thought I was weak, but he was about to see just how wrong he was. I returned to the restaurant, the autumn sunlight shining through the windows, brightening up the tables. The customers started to return thanks to Mrs. Clara and her friends, and I stood behind the counter arranging the menus. But my mind was elsewhere. I thought about Sophie, the woman in the email, who she was, and whether she knew about our family. I thought about James, about the fake smile he had once given me, each memory a cut, but also a brick building my resolve. That night, I stood in front of the restaurant door, looking at the streetlights shining on the quiet street. This town was my home, and I would protect it. James thought he could erase me, but he didn't know. I had been preparing for this for a long time. Have you ever uncovered a secret that turned your entire world upside down, like finding a fake dish on a precious menu? I just found it, and what I'm about to do will make James never forget. The town is hosting a celebration for James's company's 20th anniversary at the end of the month, and I know this is my chance, like a fateful party, to reveal the truth. I stand in front of the mirror in the apartment above Emma's Culinary Haven, wearing the elegant black dress I wore at the restaurant's grand opening. It hugs me like a reminder that I am still Emma, the woman who built a dream from scratch. I take a deep breath, looking into my eyes in the mirror. No longer tired, but burning like the light from a vibrant dish. Lisa holds my hand before we leave, her voice firm. You can do this, Emma. He doesn't stand a chance, and tonight the whole town will see your strength, the strength of Emma's Culinary Haven. I nod, the heavy file of evidence in my hand, like a menu ready to be revealed. Tonight, James will face the truth, not just with me, but in front of the whole town. The hotel lobby is packed, the chandelier sparkling, where James's colleagues, clients, and friends sit tightly like guests waiting for a grand feast. The smell of wine and appetizers fills the air, but the tension is thick, like a storm about to hit. James stands at the corner of the room, his suit crisp, a smug smile on his face, as if he were an invincible chef. Sophie stands beside him in a bright red dress, her gaze arrogant as though she were the star of the party. I walk in my heels, tapping evenly on the marble floor. The murmurs fade, and all eyes turn to me as if I were the head chef of the party. I place the file down, staring straight at James. His lips curl as though I were a dish, not worth his attention. But that smile is about to fade. I silently pass the USB containing the evidence to the technician, Mark's friend, and nod. When James steps up to the podium, his voice confident, thanking the staff and customers, the large screen behind him lights up. The emails appear, each line of text zooming in. Sophie calls me the boring old lady. James agrees, writing that he was tired of living with me. Then invoices a contract selling the company's information, offshore account details. The crowd goes silent, then whispers explode like breaking waves. James turns around, his face, pale eyes, panicked. Sophie tries to hold her smile, but her hands are shaking. I step up to the podium, taking the microphone, my voice calm but sharp as a knife. James, you think you can steal my marriage, my restaurant, my honor. You forgot that I'm not easily defeated. This company, these people, they deserve to know the truth. Sophie, you're not the winner. You're just his biggest mistake. I gesture and the staff pushes out a fake dessert covered in lavish white cream placed in the middle of the hall, like a surprise gift for James. I cut into it, revealing not a cake, but large printed copies of documents rolling out before everyone's eyes. The crowd gasps, some laugh. James stands frozen. Sophie tries to run outside, but everyone's gaze locks onto her. I look at James saying, "Justice is sweeter than any dish, isn't it?" Then I step down, leaving them with their downfall. The hall erupts in applause. Mrs. Clara stands up shouting, "We stand with you, Emma, just like we always come to your restaurant." Rachel stands up too, and then the whole hall stands clapping like thunder, drowning out everything. James's face turns white. The smile disappears. He stammers, trying to stand, but the eyes of hundreds of people weigh him down, like a light shining on a fake dish. He is no longer the respected marketing director, but the exposed traitor. I stand there, my hand gripping the file tightly, but my heart feels light, as though I've just completed my greatest dish. Lisa hugs me tightly, whispering, "You're amazing, Emma. You've turned pain into art." But I don't feel victorious, just strong, as if I've just broken the chains that bound me for years. James leaves the hall, his head down, his steps unsteady, and no one follows him. They surround me, offering encouragement, sharing their stories. An older woman holds my hand, her eyes teary. "You remind me that we must never give up, just like how you defended Emma's Culinary Haven." I return to the restaurant that night, the streetlights shining on the sign, and I stand in front of the door, breathing in the cool autumn air. This town, this community stood by me, but more importantly, I stood up for myself. James thought he could destroy me, but he didn't know I had prepared long ago. Have you ever stood before the whole world to claim justice, like revealing a dish of truth I just did? But a bigger secret is waiting for me, and it will change everything. Early in the morning, I stand in front of Emma's Culinary Haven, watching the sunrise crawl over the Vermont hills, turning the bright red leaves of autumn golden like a vibrant dish before my eyes. The cool air carries the scent of herbs and freshly brewed coffee from the restaurant's service corner. I take a deep breath, feeling my chest lighter after the confrontation at the company party last night. But that victory doesn't soothe the emptiness inside me, like a dish still missing one final flavor. I need to find myself again, not just as a winner, but as the woman who once dreamed, who once loved life through fine cuisine. I hold a cup of hot coffee, walking out to the riverbank near the town where the water flows quietly like an abstract dish, telling an ancient story. I sit on a flat rock, watching the river sparkle under the sunlight, and the past few months play out like a film reel. James's cruel messages, the contemptuous emails with Sophie, and the battle to protect Emma's Culinary Haven. I've stood up. I've fought, but I forgot to stop and breathe like a chef, too caught up in the dish, and forgetting to nourish the soul. I think about 25 years with James, the mornings I cooked for him, the nights I stayed up late, preparing meals, the times I sacrificed my dreams for his success. I wonder what I did wrong, if I loved too much or blindly. The river flows steadily, unhurried, as if reminding me that the answer is not in finding the fault, but in letting go, like a chef, letting the dish complete itself. I pull out a small notebook from my pocket, where I've written my emotions since moving into the apartment above the restaurant. The scrawled lines like sketches: pain, anger, but also moments of hope. I write about Mrs. Clara, how she brought my menu to the women's group to protect the restaurant's reputation, about Lisa, her determined gaze when she said I wasn't alone about myself, the woman who opened Emma's Culinary Haven, even though the world said I was too old to start over. These lines are like a dish reflecting the real me, not a victim, but a resilient woman, even though my heart once broke. I close my eyes, letting the sound of the water fill my mind, thinking of my mother who taught me to look at food like looking into the soul, who always said, "Emma, you are a flame that never goes out." I had forgotten those words during the years of being a wife, a mother standing behind James, but now that flame is burning again. I don't need James to feel whole. I have the restaurant, I have the community, and most importantly, I have myself. I open my eyes, looking at the river. It keeps flowing despite the stones in its path, and so will I. James may have taken my love, but he can't take my soul, just as he can't erase the flavor from a dish. I return to the restaurant, deciding to do something small but meaningful. Choose a new dish to introduce to the menu. A braised beef and red wine with herbs, as a statement that I can still find joy in the simple things. When the dish is presented, the light shines through, making it glow like a hug from the past. I stand there feeling that I am no longer the betrayed wife, but Emma, the one who brings food to the whole town. Lisa stops by that afternoon, bringing news from Mark. The accountant says our lawsuit is strong. James doesn't stand a chance, and you'll get everything back soon. I nod, but my heart is no longer caught up in the storm of revenge. I've revealed the truth, and now I want to heal. I tell Lisa about the notebook, about the river, about the new dish, and she smiles, holding my hand. You're finding yourself again, Emma. And that's the real victory, like a dish perfected after many trials. I stand up, wiping my hands on the silk cloth, looking out at the restaurant where the customers are starting to fill up the bell, ringing like music misses. Clara chats with friends. Rachel talks about the fall festival. They're not just here to eat, but for me, for Emma's culinary haven, for the story of a woman who wouldn't be broken. I've found the light in my soul, like the light shining on a precious dish. That night, I write another page in the notebook, about the river, about the sunrise, about the new dish, and that I'm no longer afraid. Have you ever had to relearn how to love yourself, like finding the flavor in a dish again? I'm doing that day by day, but what I didn't expect is that a bigger secret is waiting for me to discover, and it will change everything. The morning of the trial, I stood in front of the town courthouse, with the autumn sunlight shining through the red leaves, illuminating the sign of Emma's culinary haven in the distance, as a reminder of the dream I had built. I wore a dark blue suit, my hair neatly tied back, my hands gripping a folder of evidence, like a chef carrying a precious menu. Lisa stood beside me, her sharp gaze like a warrior's. Today is your day. Emma and I know you'll show him that Emma's culinary haven is not just food, but your strength. I nodded, feeling the cold confidence coursing through my veins, like a chef preparing for a decisive feast. James thought he could steal my love, my restaurant, my honor with a ruthless message, but today he would see that I was not just someone who cooks and organizes parties. I would prove that I was unbeatable, and that phrase was like a heartbeat guiding me into the courtroom. Inside, the air was tense, like a tightly pulled guitar string, with James sitting across from me, his expensive suit still on, but his eyes anxious, sweat beading on his forehead. Sophie was not present. Lisa said she agreed to be a witness to lessen her responsibility in exchange for spilling everything about James. Her betrayal of him made me laugh quietly, like a dish ruined by the chef themselves. Lisa stood up, her voice sharp yet calm. Your Honor, we have evidence showing that Mr. James has committed fraud, forged documents, and conspired to seize shared property. And today we will expose the truth, like we expose a fake dish. She presented each document in the folder emails between James and Sophie, a forged contract with my signature and illegal bank transactions. I looked at James as Lisa loudly read his email. Emma won't dare to oppose. She only knows how to cook and organize parties. Her tone was filled with sarcasm, causing murmurs in the courtroom like diners discovering a fake dish. James lowered his head, his hands gripping the chair, not daring to look up, and I sat upright, my eyes locked on him as if to remind him that I was no longer the obedient wife he had once belittled. Lisa continued detailing how James transferred money to overseas accounts, bought expensive gifts for Sophie, and planned to sabotage my restaurant, each piece of evidence like a bullet. And I saw James shrink with every shot. James's lawyer tried to refute, arguing that I had agreed to relinquish the property. But Lisa interrupted, her voice sharp as a knife. If Mrs. Emma agreed, why was the signature forged? Why did Mr. James hide transactions like someone trying to hide a fake dish? She held up the signature analysis, proving it was not mine. and the courtroom fell silent, only the rustle of papers as the judge reviewed them. I looked at James, seeing sweat on his forehead. He knew he had lost, and the smug smile of his lawyer vanished, replaced by panic. Sophie took the witness stand, avoiding looking at me, her voice soft, confessing that James had planned everything. Lisa didn't let her slip, asking sharp questions, forcing Sophie to admit that she had encouraged James to withdraw money and spread rumors. Every word Sophie spoke seemed to dig a deeper hole for her. I sat there feeling no satisfaction, only the cold clarity that these two didn't just betray me, but each other. When it was my turn, I stood up, my voice calm but firm. I am not here to beg. I am here to take back the restaurant, my property, my honor. James and Sophie thought they could destroy me, but I am stronger than they thought. The judge, a woman with a stern gaze, ruled. Based on the evidence, the court declares Mr. James guilty of fraud and forgery. The restaurant belongs to Mrs. Emma, and Mr. James will be held legally responsible for his actions. The gavel struck down like a final blow to James's scheme. I took a deep breath, feeling as though a weight had been lifted from my chest, and Lisa took my hand, whispering, "You did it, Emma. You've cooked up the dish of justice." But I didn't smile, only looked at James, seeing him bow his head, his shoulders trembling, not daring to look at anyone. As we left the courtroom, the autumn sunlight embraced me like a gentle hug, with Lisa and Mark walking beside me, chatting excitedly. But I was silent, letting the feeling of victory sink in. I had kept the restaurant. I had protected Emma's culinary haven, the dream I had built with sweat and tears. But more than anything, I had proven James wrong. For underestimating me, I thought of his cruel message. "Emma, I'm sorry, I can't continue living with you. Sophie understands me better than you." Now those words were just a scar reminding me that I was stronger than he thought. I returned to the restaurant that afternoon, seeing Clara and Rachel hanging a small banner. "Congratulations, Emma." The diners flooded in, not just to eat, but to hug me, saying they were proud of me. I stood behind the counter, arranging the menu, and for the first time in months, I smiled genuinely. I had reclaimed my life. That night, I stood in front of the restaurant, looking at the streetlight shining on the Emma's Culinary Haven sign. This town, this community had stood behind me, but the journey wasn't over. Have you ever won a battle, but felt there was something greater waiting like an unfinished dish? I was there, and what I was about to discover would change everything forever. The trial ended, but what James and Sophie left behind still lingered like a faint shadow. I returned to Emma's Culinary Haven, where the scent of herbs and the sound of the doorbell still greeted me every morning. Justice had been served. James had to return the money he took. Sophie disappeared from town, carrying with her the shame she brought upon herself. But this victory didn't make me feel the satisfaction I once thought it would. It was like closing an old door, leaving me with a new path, and I decided I would walk it without bitterness. One morning, as I prepared a beef stew, Lisa called. She said James had sent an apology email begging for my forgiveness. He said his life was a mess now, unemployed without Sophie, and his family had turned their backs on him. I read the email, but didn't reply. His apology came too late, like a cold dish that couldn't be saved. Lisa laughed over the phone. Living on a secretary's salary wasn't the dream James had Emma. I laughed not out of glee, but because I realized the consequences he faced were the result of his own actions. The restaurant began to revive. Thanks to the support of the community, I paid off the supplier debts, even opened a small coffee corner in the restaurant. The diners returned in greater numbers, not just for the delicious food, but because they saw my story of a woman who didn't fall, even when the whole world turned its back. Clara came every week bringing a new story. Rachel, the girl who once cried over a special dinner, now came often, her smile radiant. She said, "Emma, This restaurant is proof that we can overcome anything." Her words were like a warm breeze blowing through my heart. Anna, who had supported me from the start, became my close friend. One evening, she came to the restaurant bringing a bottle of wine and an idea to expand the restaurant. "You should hold culinary workshops in Burlington," she said, her eyes sparkling. "You've done the impossible. Don't stop now," I laughed, thinking she was joking, but Anna's gaze was serious. Her words planted a seed in me. I began to dream big, not to prove anything to James, but to prove to myself that I could soar far. I started sharing my story. Rachel asked if I would like to speak in her support group, where women overcoming divorce gathered. I hesitated, unsure if I had the strength to relive the pain, but I agreed. In that small room, I spoke about James's message, the party night, how I learned to love myself. When I was done, an older woman took my hand and said, "You make me believe I can start over too." In that moment, I realized my story was not just mine. It was a spark that could light up others. Every night I wrote in my journal, no longer about the pain, but about happiness. I wrote about the morning I tried a new dish, the smiles of the diners, the dream of culinary workshops. I wrote, "I'm not just surviving, I'm living." James and Sophie were now just faint shadows. I didn't hate them anymore. They helped me realize how strong I was, even if in a painful way. In the restaurant, watching the crowd coming and going, I felt peace as if I had found the light after a long storm. I wasn't just healing, I was growing ready for everything ahead. My restaurant now is not just a place to serve food. It is a symbol of resilience, not just for me, but for the whole town. I organized the first Flavors of Vermont event, an outdoor food festival with dishes from Emma's Culinary Haven, attracting local diners and even tourists from Burlington. Watching the crowd enjoy children running around, stories being shared around the dining table, I realized that my story had gone far beyond myself. It became a light that illuminated others, and I was determined not to let that light fade. After the talk at Rachel's support group, I received invitations from other groups, women who had gone through divorce loss or felt lost. At first, I thought I wasn't strong enough. I was just a cook, not a speaker. But Anna looked at me, her voice firm. "Emma, you don't need to be perfect, you just need to be real. Your story is the strength." I agreed, bringing my notebook and an open heart. One evening in Burlington, I stood before a group of women in a small room. The soft light around us, I shared about James's cruel message, the confrontation night, and how I learned to love myself. When I finished, Sarah, a young woman, stood up and said that my story made her want to try again, not with love, but with herself. Others shared, and I realized I wasn't just telling stories, I was helping them find their own voice. I began hosting small workshops at the restaurant called Cuisine and New Beginnings. It was just coffee, food, and sincere conversations. Rachel and Anna helped me run it, and the group kept growing. There were nights we laughed until our stomachs hurt, over awkward dating stories. There were nights we sat in silence, holding hands when someone cried. But each session ended with the feeling that we were stronger together. One time, a social media post criticized the group, saying we were glorifying divorce and tarnishing the image of family. I read the spiteful comments, my heart heavy, wondering if I was wrong. Rachel came bringing a homemade dish, ugly but full of love, and said, "Emma, don't let those words shake you. We are rebuilding ourselves," I replied to the post, my tone direct. "We don't glorify divorce. We glorify resilience." My reply spread, and the group grew larger. The second Flavors of Vermont was bigger than ever. We raised money not only for the restaurant, but for organizations that help women reintegrate after divorce. I stood on the small stage looking at hundreds of people from Mrs. Clara to new faces and said, Pain is not the end. It's where you find your strength. Anna hugged me and whispered, "You didn't just save the restaurant, Emma. You saved hearts." Every night I wrote in my notebook about the faces in the group, about Lily's smile, about my dream of a culinary workshop. I wrote, "I don't just live, I spread." The restaurant is now a community hub where people find hope. I look at the women in the group, see myself, the ones who once thought they had lost everything but found strength from the ashes. James and Sophie are now the past. They helped me realize how strong I am. In the restaurant, looking at the stream of people coming and going, I know I'm a part of something greater, not just cooking, but inspiring, connecting and living with a heart, no longer afraid. A year after the trial, I stood in the new International Culinary Academy in New York, where crystal chandeliers illuminated the modern kitchens and inspiring classrooms like a huge dish telling the story of resilience and cuisine. Emma's Culinary Academy, built from James's compensation money, and my vision is a training center for young chefs and women reintegrating into society, attracting students from all over the world, from New York to Paris. The sound of knives cutting rhythmically, the scent of herbs filling the air, and I, in a white coat embroidered with my name, stood in the middle of the space feeling a deep sense of pride. This academy is not only my dream, but the fire I pass on to the world, to those who once believed in me. I've built a legacy from the ashes, and that phrase is now a song, echoing in every beat of my life. The gala tonight is a big event with famous chefs, food critics, and even Rachel, who brought my story to the support groups. The gala attracted hundreds of people, from women who had been betrayed to young chefs daring to dream big, and they sent letters, emails, even flew to New York to meet me. A girl from Chicago wrote, "Ms. Emma, seeing you rise from betrayal, I dared to open my own small restaurant. Those letters are like jewels, reminding me that my story is a torch lighting the way for others." I still remember James's cruel message, "Emma, I'm sorry I can't continue living with you. Sophie understands me more than you." Those words once felt like a knife tearing my heart apart, but now they are just a faint memory, like a dish that has faded in flavor. James has disappeared from the town. No one mentions him, and I heard he's living quietly in a faraway city without friends, without fame, his arrogance, digging his own grave. Justice has been served not only through the trial, but through the way I live more brilliantly than ever. Emma's Culinary Academy is a symbol of resilience. I offer free classes for women and youth, and Sarah, a student, is now a lecturer here, creating unique dishes that attract thousands of customers. I look at Sarah and see myself from 30 years ago, a passionate woman not afraid of challenges. I also awarded the first culinary scholarship to Mia, a young girl who wanted to learn cooking in Paris, and when Mia hugged me crying from gratitude, I realized my legacy is not just the academy, but the dreams I've helped others reach. Lisa is still my indispensable companion. She came over tonight, bringing a bottle of champagne and a mischievous smile. I bet James never imagined you would stand in the middle of New York, hosting a culinary gala, making the whole world marvel. I laughed loudly for the first time in years, feeling pure joy, and we raised our glasses, looking at the chandelier lights shining on the kitchens. Lisa reminded me of the river where I used to sit to heal, about the notebook where I wrote my thoughts. "You've come a long way, Emma, from a small restaurant in Vermont to here." I nodded, my heart full, and still write in my notebook every night, but now the words are no longer about pain, but about new dishes, letters from students. Sarah's smile when she teaches a class. I write about the home where I host dinners for Lily and the grandkids, where laughter echoes again. And about myself, the 56-year-old woman learning to live for herself, no longer needing anyone to define her worth. Those words are like a dish telling the story of a woman turning scars into medals. That night, I stood on the podium looking at hundreds of guests and said, Emma's Culinary Academy is not just a place to learn cooking, but proof that no matter how life throws you into the darkness, you can still cook up the light. The applause thundered, and I knew no matter what tomorrow brings, I've left an indelible mark. Have you ever realized that life can give you the opportunity to become the legend of your own story, like cooking a masterpiece from the broken pieces? I did it, and Emma's Culinary Academy will forever be my fire, the legacy I leave for the world.